Welcome to Hot Metal News. My name is Steve Mascord. As we all know, we lost the great Ozzy Osbourne on July 22. I was fortunate enough to go to the Back to the Beginning show at Villa Park, best concert I've ever been to. And sadly, through pre-arranged travel, I arrived back in Birmingham just the day after we lost Ozzy, and was lucky enough to see Lita Ford perform their duet at a concert there in not far away in Wolverhampton. But anyway, it's not about me. We're talking about Ozzy. And not long ago, we spoke to the Slaughter founder, Dana Strum, and he talked about his days in Los Angeles when Ozzy had been kicked out of Black Sabbath. He didn't know what he was going to do, and Dana told us the advice he gave Ozzy.
And knowing an early guy in the early day when he was just canned from Black Sabbath, those are memories that if I close my eyes, I can relive every second of them, because I was a huge Black Sabbath fan. Still am. Black Sabbath, the real version, either the Ozzy version or the Heaven and Hell record. To me, that real period, Volume 4, Master of Reality, Paranoid, they could do no wrong for me at that time as a younger kid, and they can do no wrong for me now as I listen, because the magic of those guys playing in a room together, as primitive and as, four blokes from Birmingham just doing whatever they could. And I think you feel it and hear it in the music. And if somebody hasn't revisited that stuff, it's really worth revisiting. Snowblind or Tomorrow's Dream or Wheels of Confusion. I mean, they're like hard rock metal masterpieces. And if you really listen, there's no Pro Tools and there's no time correction. And it's just guys playing their hearts out. And, it's a fascinating thing, because if those guys didn't do what they did, so many acts would have never had the shape or the vibe or the music that they ever came up with. And these four guys were lucky enough to pave the way for so many of us. So I am and was a huge fan. And when I met Ozzy, he was very down and out. He's documented and talked about this. There's my side and his side, and they coincide, almost vertically the whole time. And he had a lot of doubts if he was going to have an ongoing career. He says that out there too. I had no idea. And I did have an idea, and I told him, look, people love you. And he questioned that. And a very funny episode that happened, I didn't know him well. My Black Sabbath sounding band was playing the Starwood. He came to the Starwood, and it's, again, well documented out there. And I didn't know much about him. I just loved the music. So at one point in the hotel, as we were talking, getting to know each other, I said, so, hey, what do you play? And he kind of looked at me cross-eyed. And what do you mean? And I said, do you play the bass or the guitar or the drums? And he says, I don't play anything, Dana. And I'm like, well, my name's Dana. Yeah, I just fucking said your name, Dana. And I'm like, all right, well, forget that. But I said, well, how do you make that stuff up that you do? And he says, and it was a really honest answer. And he says, well, it's just in my head. And so I'm a kid, and I'm kind of awestruck. And I said, do it. Just do it. And he's like, I'm not auditioning for you, Dana. And I think he was like almost offended. And I said, no. I'm just curious. Just do it for a minute. Just do it. And so he finally puts his finger in his ear, and he's like, I want. And all I had to hear was 3-4 notes. I said, you can stop. He says, why is that? I said, no, you can stop. You are the guy that made that stuff up. And you could see him get very somber, like, I am. And I'm like, but you still are. He's like, well, they've sacked me, and they have Ronnie Dio, and they and I said, but it doesn't matter. Believe me, it doesn't matter. And he's like, I hope you're right. And I'm like, oh no, I'm right. Meanwhile, I want to tell you, I know this guy is going to change your life. And I had a guitar player in my mind that would just be this fit.
And another very interesting thing which Dana said, he talked about the role he played in introducing Ozzy to his iconic guitarist, Randy Rhoads.
Because in Hollywood at the time, I was always shocked. No one really got Randy Rhoads. There was A&R people, talent scouts, booking agents, journalists, writers. No one ever said, this guy is going to change the world. No one. And there was me in my band sitting at the top balcony saying, how does no one get this? This guy's so fucking good and so different. And it was, a really great lesson out there. If you think you're onto something and you believe in something, you got to see it all the way through. And there was no money. There was no business deal. It was just from my heart. And I just knew this guy the world had to see this. And once the world did start to see that, I think Randy Rhoads changed the world of guitar for a lot of people. And I was always really proud.
And of course, we lost Randy in March 1982 in a plane crash that I'm sure all music fans know about. And having introduced Ozzy to Randy, it was a very, very tough episode in the life of Dana Strum.
And then I was horrified at his death because the truth was he had never been on a plane before he went to England. A lot of people don't know that. He had never flown. And how does he die? In a plane crash. And of course, I'm thinking, oh my God, I tried to convince him to do this. And one of the funniest oddball moments was him telling me that he really didn't like Black Sabbath. And I'm like, well, we certainly don't want to tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but they didn't, and that's also documented out there. And I'm like, how can you play like that and not like Black Sabbath? I mean, be real. But he was so real that he gave me a bootleg cassette. And I said, what's this? He said, well, all the stuff that you like about me, it's right here. And I said, oh, is this like you guys playing live at the Starwood or the Whiskey? He says, no. Have you ever heard of David Bowie? And I said, yeah. You know his guitar player, Mick Ronson. Now I'm looking at Randy Rhoads with the frosted hair, the big hoop earrings, the polka dots on, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, he looks like Mick Ronson. And he goes, because everything that you like that I do, I took from this guy. And I'm like, not only was it honest, but it was, he is emulating his hero.
Yeah.
And if you look at an early picture of Randy with the polka dots and the cream Les Paul, and you look at Mick Ronson, you could put them next to each other. And I'm like, how did I miss this? I never even thought about what influences it was. But it was one of those things that things can be so obvious, but it was very endearing. And I was very proud of doing that. I was also proud of putting Jake together with him. I love that music as a fan. I never made any money doing those things. I never asked for any money doing those things. It was the right thing to do, and I thought in my mind, I'll have my day, and whenever that comes, I'll try to make the most of it. The truth was, I was driving down the street after I knew that I had put Randy and Ozzy together, and I remembered in my mind, of course, you always do, Randy's mother, who owned the music school that Randy taught at, Dolores Rhoads. She would religiously tell me, don't call here. He's in the middle of a lesson, and don't call her, because he taught music lessons. And I said, but no, I really need to talk to him because I've got a studio and he's going to come down and play for Ozzy Osbourne. He's in a lesson. Click. And I'm like, all right, I'll just pretend that didn't happen, and I'm going to call again. Calling here, and so all of the things go through your mind, the moments that lead up to something. And when the world accepted him so wholeheartedly, I was proud and thrilled. And I'm like, hey, I was right. The world did get him, and the world needed him, and the world embraced him, and he changed how many young kids wanted to play guitar because of him. And Then I was driving on Sunset Boulevard and heard on the radio, we just played Leonard Skinner Freebird, and that's dedicated to Randy Rhoads, who just passed away this morning in a tragic plane crash. And I pulled my crappy car over and just started crying. And I thought, in my mind at that moment, what the fuck did I do? He didn't really like Sabbath. I kind of pushed him. What if I never did that? You know, he'd still be alive. All those thoughts race through your mind. And, you know, I felt horrible for years until I did a documentary piece where a student of his became an award-winning writer and photojournalist. And he says, you know, I was in the room when you called the front a number of times. So you're kidding. And he says, no, I was, and Rudy Sarzo was in the other room. I said, okay. He says, do you know his mom, Dolores, told him, that guy might be right. This might be your chance. You should go down there and do this. I always thought I was the one that really leaned on him. But apparently his mom looked at him and said, this may be the thing for you. And the guy might be right. You know, as strong as he's coming on, he may be right. And I'm like, all right, that just took 50 of the 100 pounds off my shoulders.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I would ever let go of it, because if that exact timeline didn't occur, who knows? Ozzy may not have had the career that he had. Randy may not have been known all over the world as the inspiration that he was. You try to do the right thing, the best that you can. And, you know, even after Jakey Lee was out of Ozzy's band and I ran into him, and he was on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and he was standing by the speakers, and we were sound checking, and he says, I hear this voice, hey, don't stand up there, you might fall. And I kind of looked down like, who's saying this? You know? And he goes, hey, it's Jake Williams. And that was his real name. And I'm like, look down, I'm like, son of a bitch, it's Jake. And, you know, it was just one of those moments. And you're like, here we are again. You know, and you just do what, you know, you do what you think is right. And it's a fairly small, incestuous world. And you do the best that you can. And most of the people that I've been involved with have done the best they can. It doesn't mean they're the greatest in the world. They've done the best they can. That's all we can all do.
So don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to go to hotmetalmag.com. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Yes, it is Hot Metal, the great Australasian magazine from the 1980s. We're back.